A meta-analysis of 11 longitudinal studies found perfectionistic concerns come first and predict anxiety later. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a huge, eye-opening topic for those of us raising high-achieving kids and teens between the ages of 8 and 17.
You know, for the longest time, we just assumed anxiety caused kids to become perfectionists, like they were using perfectionism to cope with feeling anxious, right? Well, this landmark 2018 study by Smith and colleagues totally flips that assumption on its head. Perfectionism isn't just a side effect, it actually comes first. It's the literal engine driving the anxiety.
Section 1. The Perfectionism Trap. Differentiating ambition from fear.
To really help our kids out, we first need to debunk a huge myth, the idea that pushing for high standards is somehow inherently bad. It's not. Research actually splits perfectionism into two completely different camps. Over on the left, we have what's called perfectionistic strivings. This is just having high personal standards. And honestly, high standards all on their own are totally fine. They're healthy. But take a look at the right side. Perfectionistic concerns. This right here is the damaging ingredient. It's defined by a deep fear of making mistakes, harsh self-criticism, and a sense of self-worth that feels entirely tied to how well they perform. And the data shows us, this concern side, that's the one actively generating the anxiety.
Section 2. High standards versus high anxiety. The stakes of perfectionistic concerns.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the stakes here, just look at this number, 284. Back in 2017, Limburg and colleagues ran a massive meta-analysis, looking at 284 distinct groups of people to see what perfectionism actually does to a person's mental health over time. So we're not talking about some small, isolated observation here. This is an absolute mountain of empirical data.
And honestly, what they found was pretty alarming. Perfectionistic concerns don't just trigger one single issue. They act as a massive gateway, or a transdiagnostic risk factor. This specific type of fear is heavily linked to anxiety, depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, eating disorders, and sadly, even outcomes like self-harm. When a kid's worth is just relentlessly tied to being flawless, the psychological toll is immense. It impacts the whole shebang.
Section 3. The real fear of failure. Unpacking the meltdown over a B grade.
So what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, if you've ever watched a high-achieving kid totally fall apart over a completely respectable B grade, or maybe they quit a sport entirely just so they don't have to lose a match, you are witnessing true fear of failure in action. Conroy put forward a framework in 2002 that spells this out perfectly. It's not a fear of the letter B itself or the physical act of losing a soccer game. Actually, it's a deep, deep dread of the consequences and the meaning of that failure.
Think about it. What does failing actually mean inside their head? To a kid consumed by this pressure, a mistake equals profound shame and embarrassment. They literally start to believe they are worth less as a human being. But the heaviest part? The social fears. They are absolutely terrified of upsetting important people. You, their parents, their coaches. They fear losing your approval, and they're scared that one single mistake guarantees an uncertain, completely ruined future. That is just a crushing burden for a kid to carry on a random Tuesday math test, right?
Section 4. Practical tools for parents, fostering resilience and healthy achievement.
But hey, the genuinely good news here is that this cycle is highly preventable. Based on a developmental framework designed by Flett and Hewitt, we as parents actually have 3 major levers we can pull to build resilience in vulnerable kids before these anxious patterns harden for good. And those are praising the process, decoupling the child's worth from their performance, and reframing errors. Let's break those down.
Let's look at how just tweaking your everyday language is key for that first step. On the left, we have process praise. Wow, you worked really hard on that strategy. On the right, person praise. You're so smart, or you're the absolute best. Now, if you tell a child they are so smart every time they get an A, you're inadvertently telling them their worth is an innate, fixed trait. So when they eventually struggle, which, by the way, is a completely normal part of learning, they feel like they've lost that trait and failed you. Praising the process avoids tying their worth to this flawless track record they feel they absolutely have to maintain.
Next up, you've got to normalize mistakes by modeling self-compassion yourself. Kids are incredibly observant. They're like little sponges. So let them see you burn dinner. Let them see you take a wrong turn on the drive home. And more importantly, let them see you recover calmly. Just saying out loud, "Oops, what can I learn from this?" shows them that errors aren't verdicts on your character. They're just useful pieces of information.
It's also super important we support them by actively avoiding some of the really common pitfalls. Catch yourself if you're only ever rewarding final outcomes or reacting to mistakes with visible, heavy disappointment. Never, ever tie privileges or your affection to how well they perform. And finally, try to lower the temperature a bit. Overscheduling and relentless competitive pressure, those are basically breeding grounds for anxiety. So actively protect their time for just resting and unstructured play.
Section 5. When to seek professional help. Navigating real distress.
Now, while these parenting tools are incredibly powerful, we aren't doctors, and we really have to recognize when our strategies alone simply aren't enough. If high standards start to mutate into a fear that causes genuine distress, things like panic attacks, severe procrastination where they basically refuse to even try, significant sleep loss, or absolutely any form of self-harm, it is absolutely time to step back and consult a mental health professional.
We want to leave you with this final, vital thought today. Your reaction to their mistakes is the blueprint they will use for themselves for the rest of their lives. If you react with grace, perspective, and curiosity, they're going to learn to do the exact same thing. So ask yourself, how will you redefine failure for your child today?
Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer. Fear Me Not helps kids conquer fears through science-backed play.